Here is one of a series of talks by spiritual leader Lola McDowell Lee, spanning 2 decades from the early 70s through the 90s. Lola was a Zen Roshi, whose Rinzai lineage included Dr. Henry Platov and renowned Zen master Shigetsu Sasaki. Lola was a religious scholar as well as an ordained Christian minister. While the talks are focused mainly on Zen and Buddhism, Lola drew on many spiritual traditions, including those of Jesus, Plato, Lao Tzu, the Hindu Vedas, Meister Eckhart, and Gurdjieff.
At the death of a parishioner, Master Dogo, accompanied by his disciple Zengen, visited the bereaved family. Without taking a time to express a word of sympathy, Zengen went up to the coffin and rapped on it and asked Dogo, alive or dead? And the master replied, alive, I would not say. Dead, I would not say. And this monk then said, well, why not say either way? And the master persisted, no saying either way. And on their way home, this monk, who couldn't grasp the matter, have you grasped the matter? This monk couldn't grasp the matter, and he didn't understand what this master wanted, what he meant. And this time he said very threateningly, if you refuse to tell me, either way, I will strike you. And this master then, Master Dogo, said, well, strike away, if you will. As to saying either way, no. And sometime later, Dogo died. And Zengen was still, twirling around in his mind with this question, so he wanted to have it answered. And so he went to the master Sakeso. And after telling him what had happened, he asked the same question. And Sakeso, as if conspiring with the dead Dogo, wouldn't answer. And this Zengen said, by God, you too! And no saying either way. Why not saying either way? And then this man said, no saying whatever. And when he said that, that opened Zengen's mind. Shall I repeat it? No saying whatever. And this opened Zengen's mind, and how grateful he was to the unspeakable kindness of his deceased master. No saying either way. Yeah. Well, life and death. We're confronted with it all the time. And actually, this is how we're supposed to sit for meditation. Meditation is a life and death matter. Now, life and death is a mystery. It's one out of many. Life and death. Because they're two aspects of the same mystery. See? They're two doors of the same secret, if you want to have it that way. Secrets I have got. You're interested? Our entrance into this existence and our exit out of this existence. So, life is lived, hopefully, at the entrance, it's lived. And the exit is lived, hopefully. They are experiences. Unless you live And unless you die, who is going to answer your questions about life and death? There's nobody can answer it except you. Now, a lot of answers have been given about life and death. People speak about it very often, especially from a pulpit, And it isn't a situation where one answer is correct and another one is incorrect or false. It isn't that at all. The solving of this problem of life and death, of this situation in which we find ourselves, one doesn't answer it just in a given manner. There's nothing to choose. This answer or that answer, or this way or that way. There's nothing to choose. The only way you will get an answer is to experience. It's like sugar. You have to taste it in order to know what sweet is, what sugar tastes like. You know the saying, life is sweet, they say, taste the strawberries. How else? Remember, we're here, not by our own choosing. We just arrived on the scene, and here we are. And out of many, there are a few that are extremely fortunate to have a curiosity about themselves. It's more than a curiosity, it's a wanting to know about themselves. And that's a very good thing. But we are involved in a real mystery. It's not a riddle that we have created. If it were simply a riddle, then we could answer it. But life and death is not something that man created. This mystery arrives with him in this world, and it departs with him when he exits this world, either answered or not. And mostly, of course, it's not answered. People are not interested in dying while living. But we live in life, and we live in death. Every day. Hopefully that the time will come when we can say with St. Paul, I die daily. I die daily. Every day his ego died a little, and every day he became a little more alive in Christos. I die daily. What else is going to die? Some of your thoughts will die, and some of your emotions will die. The ego dies, personality, but, that's something you built up while you were here. You didn't come with it. You came with the requirements needed to build it, and it's something you have created, and because you created it, you let it go. Ramakrishna, he was the teacher of the great Vivekananda. Vivekananda brought Vedanta to this country, to America. Anyway, Ramakrishna, so I have heard, used to tell a story. Once upon a time, there was a great festival on the shores of a great sea. Thousands of people gathered. And for some reason or another, at one point, they all became very engrossed in a particular question. Whether or not the sea was measurable or immeasurable. Whether or not there was a bottom to this sea or there was not a bottom to this sea. Was it fathomable or unfathomable? And this being a story of a once upon a time thing, by chance, one man who was made of salt as we are, he was there also. And he said to the crowd, you wait, you discuss. And I will go into the ocean and I will find out. Because how can one know unless one goes into the thing? What can you know about the dragon unless you enter his hide? Yeah. So the man of salt jumped into the ocean. And hours passed. Days passed. Weeks passed. Months passed. Little by little, the people left. They waited and they waited and they waited. And finally, it seemed to them that the man of salt wasn't going to come back. Well, of course, this man of salt, the moment that he started, that he entered this ocean, he started melting. Salt does dissolve, after all, in water. And by the time he had reached the bottom, he was not. Thusly he came to know. But he had gone so far, he couldn't come back. And those who did not know, who were there on the bank, they discussed it for a long time. And it seems that finally they reached their own conclusions, because after all, this is the function of the mind. It loves to reach conclusions. And having reached conclusion, it feels easy with itself, And so we look for the answers, and we pick various themes, and we do some funny things, and we will say to ourselves and to our friends, well, look at this mess that I was in. But I had to go through it so I could learn a lesson. Oh, yes. Do you ever ask them, what lesson did you learn? Really? We should be face to face with the thing, face it, Why did you really go through that mess? Well, you know why you went through that mess. It wasn't that you needed a lesson. You wanted something. Well, then I went through it because it was my karma. Now you can dismiss the whole thing because you got a reason. But then, karma, we have given it some peculiar things. Your body is your karma. Your body and its activities. That's your karma. And if you read Hakuin's Song of Meditation, he finishes it with the enlightenment phrase, this very body, Buddha. That's your karma. All your activities should be thusly. Yeah? But, people are not interested in that. It's, my karma is, it's in the head here someplace. And I'm learning lessons, and I'm doing things to so I won't have so much karma anymore. Yeah, but what happened to that karma? What happened to it that you dismissed so lightly that you got through? Where did it go? Where did it go? It went somewhere. You believe it existed, so of course it does. Now where did it go? But if we can glue this label on it in our misunderstanding, the word karma is a good word. Yeah, just don't add into this, don't make it a portmanteau of all of the things that you would like to think it is. Just so you can satisfy your mind. Your minds are not really here to be satisfied. Not really. As soon as we have satisfied the mind, we miss the point. Pacifying the mind is one thing, but satisfying the mind is something else. We keep missing, because of our satisfaction with ourselves, we keep missing what it is that we need to know. Yeah. We have satisfied the questioning mind with an answer that somebody gave us. We heard it, or we read it, or whatever, but we don't really know. Do you really? People use this word karma so blithely. Do you really know what your karma is? Ask them. Do you really know what your karma is? It's not such a big mystery. No. We take these answers and we use them like a baby uses a pacifier, a teddy bear. Yeah? And what it really wants, the baby, is some milk. Anyway, it's still just a side issue, something that goes around and around in the mind. And why worry so much with side issues? What is important? What is important? What is important? Life, isn't it? Life is important. How can you answer about life? You don't even look at it, How can you answer about life? You jump into the sea. Into the background, Yeah. Well, jump into the sea? Me? Jump into the sea? That's fraught with danger. Remember, Ramakrishna is a true man. Yeah. And we are all men of salt, as far as the ocean is concerned. We're men of salt, and we're going to melt into it. We're going to die daily. It is not an unpleasant situation, this dying daily to the Christos. It's quite a pleasant experience. It's something you would really like to have. Yeah. We melt into it because we have come out of it. We're made by it, we're made of it, and we live in it, this ocean. The only thing is, we can't see it and we can't think it. Yeah. We can't grasp it, therefore. Now, I could also say or ask, how hard have you really tried to see this ocean, other than with your physical eyes? Have you really set aside all the answers that you have gathered in your reading and your so on and listening and so on? Have you set them all aside, everything aside, and then have you really held this focus in this dark abyss? The mind, the thinking mind, is not going to move off the shore. No. It's going to stay right there discussing and debating and defining and arguing and making theories, systems. That's what it does. But we should jump. Or at least you could get one toe wet. Yeah. Somebody else's answer is only information for us. You know, it's what they call fodder for the stock. You must know. When you know, the answer will give you wings of freedom. And if you're just hanging on to the information that someone else has given you, this information hangs like stones around your neck. You're never set free by somebody else's answer, unless that answer comes like this one, no saying, so that it opened his mind. See, it freed him. You know what it freed him of? From? It says so right in the story. You didn't listen. Now, this salt man, if he had been able to come back after touching the depths, you know, how would he relate his experiences? His language, the language that he is going to use, will belong to the depths. And our language belongs to the riverbank or to the shore. About all he's going to be able to say is, you come along too. Take a jump with me into the ocean. And then we're going to look at him and we're going to say, well, answer me some questions first. Yeah. How do I know you're right? No. Well, let me consider this and think about it. And let me brood about it, and let me ponder about it. And then maybe someday I might follow. Maybe. When my mind is convinced, then I will jump, you know. Well, that kind of a thing is like a woman. And a woman convinced against her will is of the same opinion still. Right, yeah. So you'll never jump. I mean, you won't even wade out into it, which is not so bad. So what's the point of arguing about it? Yes and no. Yeah, I ought to do it, but I don't. The way is pointed. All you have to do is go. It's like our little monk, and he's traveling on the train, and in the little compartments train. And at one stop, a man came in and sat down next to the monk, and there was another man sitting there, so the three of them were sitting there, and this newcomer turned to the monk, and he says, hello, and, you know, how are you? Oh, said the monk, I'm absolutely fine. And how is your wife? Oh, she's also fine, thank you. And how are the children? Oh, they're all doing very well, thank you. So a little while later, there was, in the next stop, this newcomer got off, and the third man turned to the monk and said, what's the matter? You don't have a wife. You don't have any children. You know, and the monk said, well, I know that, but why argue? Huh? Yeah. I mean, he would have come a big argument that he didn't know the monk really, and blah, 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 blah. But we do this, you know, every now and then. We keep our mouths shut so as not to create an argument. One of the old patriarchs, hearing something like that, they probably just nodded and let it go at that, because they never did really, in a way, have very much to say. But when they did open their mouths to say something, you know, they created arguments. What did he really mean? What did he really mean? We ask a question and we're so engrossed in the weaving of the answers that are going to suit us that we have completely forgotten that the ocean even exists. When you have a question to ask, your mind is focused on the question, and you're waiting for an answer to that question. But supposing there was somebody else here, like Tani Roshi, or say even like, if it were possible, Sokian, or Dr. Planoff, You know, if you watch people like that, their presence tells you something when you ask them a question, you know. The answer is almost immediately present as the person formulates the answer in the mind, that is, puts it in a word, formulates the answer in his mind. Before one word is spoken, the answer is there. It's what is called non-articulation. It is present on a non-articulated level. You know that area in yourself? It's wordless. The wordless answer, which is immediately prior to the clothing in words. Yeah, that's the answer. So watch, you know. You can practice on each other. There is a noetic quality of the mind, which is hidden in words. But if you look and are not just waiting for the answer that you want, you're looking for an answer, any answer, it's there. And then it's put into clothes that we call words, But if you watch, you'll see the indications. First there is a silence, and then there would be the way he looks at you. You know, you do have some powers of observation. You have many more than you realize, even. So use them, and find out what some others are, even. And then you must remember precisely what was said. I mean precisely. Maybe at that particular moment, you're not in the right place to have an understanding of the depth of the answer. But what was said is like a seed thrown in your psyche. You know, this adds to the content. And then at the proper time, it will bloom. And you'll say, oh, yes, of course. How could I have been so blind? Yeah. But if you cannot even remember what was said precisely, if you keep rewording it to suit yourself, you've lost it. Precisely what was said. And that also goes for your koan, your problems you're observing. You should remember precisely what the problem is. Otherwise, what are you working on? It was put in a particular manner, and there is a particular answer to the particular problem as it was put. Yeah. Sometimes a question is asked just out of a curiosity, you know. There's not a real wanting to know. Or maybe people will ask questions just to fill up the silence. They do that quite a bit, And the way you ask shows that you're not really concerned. You know, you're not going to use the answer anyway. Lots of that. You know, and you know, it's like someone dies, And so this starts the whole thing of, well, what is death? And asks a question like that, and the next moment has forgotten all about it. Not concerned. I remember, I think I've told you this before, when I was a little kid, 6 or 7, there was a little girl down the street. I didn't know her well, but I did know her. And she died. And she was about the same age as I was. And some of the neighbors gathered in our living room, and one elderly gentleman there gave me a nickel. At that time, a nickel was a nickel. And I was happy to have the money. It would at least buy me an Eskimo pie. See? But I'm still puzzling, why the nickel? It's a good koan, huh? Why he gave me a nickel. I mean, he was old enough so that he was looking at it, you know. But at that time, her death was quite natural to me. I mean, nothing to be upset about. Mm-hmm. That wasn't the puzzle. The nickel was the puzzle for that little kid. This one over here, he puzzles as to how Jack got out of this world without his car. That he can't understand. He's out in front of the house, you know, and he says, the Buick, the car's yours. Yes, it's mine. The other one is Jack's. Mm-hmm. How could he leave without his car? This is what he's put together. If you're going to go someplace, you go in a car. Yeah. Anyway, he worried about it quite a long time. So, at the death, here comes this problem again. And you're going to find out now maybe what he's driving at. At the death of a parishioner, Master Dogo, accompanied by his disciple Zengen, visited the bereaved family. Without taking time to express a word of sympathy, Zengen went right up to the coffin and he rapped on it and said, "Alive or dead?" See, he had a real interest. I mean, he was so interested, he didn't even bother to say to the family, "I'm sorry about this tragedy in your household." Nothing. He right in the house and right up the coffin and bang, 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 bang. Alive or dead? Hmm? There's a problem. What do you make of it? Well, we can digress for a moment. You know, when someone dies, something's happening, you know, in their very depths. If you could just sit there and hold a focus, you know, meditate, there are a lot of things that might be revealed to you. Mm-hmm. Instead, what do people do? They discuss problems. What is death and where do we go, or do we really just disappear? And somebody might say, well, nobody dies, really. The self is immortal, you know. Or somebody else might say, well, he's gone to join the angels. Mm-hmm. So comes then a discussion of the Bible, of the Upanishads, of the Gita, you know, and lots of quoting from lots of authorities. There are lots of authorities in this world, lots and lots of them. Mm-hmm. Not much you're going to find out this way. No. To find out, you have to be silent. So just sit there and shut up. If you can be silent when death comes, you will see many things, because death is not just that a person stops breathing. You should look. You know, I experimented once, a long time ago. I had heard about a thing with a... Do you think this ought to go on the tape? No. There was this woman who came into the office, and she belonged to the Rosicrucians up in San Jose. and she, was getting their correspondence course. Very dangerous. But she had, answered questions over the years, and fortunately, she had a good, strong ego, so she didn't accomplish much. In Chicago, I've seen people with it, and they wound up in an insane asylum. So this is why I say this woman was fortunate. Anyway, there is a real Rosicrucian fellowship. There is a real one. But and it's the remnants of it now are in New York, but it's still for real. Anyway, this woman was going on about this final test that they had given. She went all through this whole rigmarole, years of it, and this final test then was to go through death while she was still alive. So she sat there and did just as they said, candle on each side of her, and this mirror in front of her, and everything else is in darkness, And she says, and you're supposed to start at midnight. And she sat there and she looked at herself in the mirror, and she looked at herself in the mirror until 2 o'clock in the morning. And she says, absolutely nothing happened. So I got curious. So I had also heard it was dangerous. When you leave your body, why, there should be somebody around to do something so you can get back in again. So here I am. I'm in the kitchen on 10th Street. I've got this mirror sitting in front of me. I have a candle on either side, and I've got a cigarette going, and I put it in the ashtray, in case I go out, why, there's something that's going to bring me back. I'll just pick up the cigarette. So I'm sitting there, and my face is going all through these changes, just lots of them. And the next thing you know, here's this blue light, and I'm out. And I look back at myself, and I was dead. So I jolly well got back in very rapidly, because I was dead. It is true that when people die, other people have seen it, nurses in the hospitals and so on. When you die, you go out with blue light. I didn't know that then. But I looked at my face, and it was the face of a dead person. I knew what I would look like when I was dead. Anyway, there as we are with that. What is going on with when somebody dies, is that the energy field is compacting. We could say subsiding, it's moving in instead of out. It's returning to its center. When a child is born, it gradually moves out. It's the opposite of dying, The energy field in the hara, begins to spread. It just goes just like you throw a pebble into a nice, quiet, silent lake, and here comes the ripples, little bitties, and then and when the baby is born, he takes a breath, and the center, this hara, is immediately affected with this breath, and the ripples begin to move out. This energy field moves out and around, And so that during our life, we are spreading this energy, the energy forces all around us. And somewhere around the age of 35, the age of maturity, it begins just to hold. It doesn't spread out anymore. It holds. It sort of hesitates there, And then if a person is going to die naturally, later on when it begins to die, it gradually begins, and returns to the center. This energy becomes concentrated. It becomes compacted. It's concentrated light is what it is, Now, if you're silent, and if you're observing, And if your sorrow is not in the way, you can feel it because it's got a pull to it. The energy is contracting back to its source. And this, in a way, is what you do if you are properly meditating. The energy compacts and returns to its source. And when that energy is compacted to a sufficient extent, it just carries you right across the abyss. So when an individual stops breathing, we say he's dead. And so now comes time, our time. Yogananda Paramhamsa, the fellowship realization thing over there, self-realization fellowship. Yogananda Paramhamsa, when he died, they kept him for viewing for 40 days. He was not embalmed, but there was no sign at the end of 40 days of any deterioration. Don't try that with me. Yeah. And I've been told that in the tomb where Jesus was placed, where he was, buried for those 3 days, that the energy field of Jesus can still be felt. 2,000 years, alive or dead. And there is a little town of Shirdi in India where Sri Baba lived. And they say that the energy of this man is still present, that the inhabitants still can feel and live with his energy forces. Alive or dead? And be very careful with that question. Very careful. Because I'm going all around about, and hopefully somebody sees what it's really all about. Anyway, this disciple, Zengen, the question, it's okay, alive or dead, but the timing for him wasn't. Well, what did he mean, really? What do any of us mean when you use the word dead? Alive or dead? It's like, when a person is dying, we see him disappearing, as it were, through an invisible door. Let's call it that. I think it's a good way. Because a door is to be passed through, so we say he passed away. He went through this door, invisible door. Now, this door that we go through eventually is more than just the stopping of the breathing. If this were all, then it's not a door to anything. Everything would stop. It's just like stopping the clock, tick-tock, 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 runs down, that's the end of it, Everybody asks, where's the tick-tock gone? Well, it hasn't gone anywhere. The mechanism stopped. So, is death like this? Is this what you've got in your head? No. If so, then it's not a mystery at all, is it? It just stops. How can life disappear so easily? Life isn't a mechanism. Life is awareness. You can hear the tick-tock. The clock can't. You're aware. You can listen to the beat of your heart. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Listen. Who is the listener? The clock stops, and where does the listener go? Now, some people are very interested in esoteric things. That's what I think I ought to start talking about. They go into the first crossing and the second crossing and the third crossing and so on. Now, dying is on one of these crossings. Many things one learns when one sits and listens. You know, Henry tells about the time when Sokean was he was in New York, I guess, at that time. Maybe he was still in Washington. Anyway, when he came over here, the first thing he did, he bought himself a ticket to go back to Japan. And when he had a certain experience, he knew he would go back. And that experience was dying. And the day that he had the experience of dying, he went down and made a reservation. He already had his ticket. And went back to Japan. See his teacher. Yeah. He died. He's running around getting on an airplane. Alive or dead? Yeah. So we talk about death is like a door. I go in there and you come in and die. That'd be nice. The awareness, it moves, but the body remains at the door. It's left outside the temple. Yeah. The awareness enters the temple. And now focus all your attention there and hold it. This is your opportunity. I mean, even in observing the thing, it's your opportunity. Life doesn't die. It moves through the door. The personality dies, but not your awareness. No? You hear it all the time. Life is not born, therefore life does not die. Living and dying are two sides of one coin. Yeah. Now, witnessing someone passing through the door. At that moment, remember, you also are in front of that door to the temple. It is holy ground you're treading. Yeah. Let's not be childish about the thing. We don't have to say a lot of things, and we're on holy ground at the door of a temple, of the temple of all temples. Now, we have become identified with this body, of course. We're identified with its mechanisms. And the mechanism is going to stop because it can't be eternal. It's a conditioned phenomenon. Awareness is unconditioned. No matter how much junk you put into it, it's still unconditioned. It does its thing, regardless of what you think. Yeah? And it doesn't depend on anything that you do or that you don't do. It's there in its unconditioned state. So recognize your conditioning and recognize your unconditioning. Observe while you have the opportunity what is conditioning and what is unconditioned. This is your opportunity. Look at it. Now, after Dojo's death, Zengen visited another master, Sakeso. And he presented him with the same question, alive or dead? And the answer was the same. No saying either way. Well, why not saying either way? So this one said, no saying whatever. And this opened this man's mind. Did it open yours? Do you see the problem? Do you see the problem? Holy smokes. Now, he goes to this other master and he says, alive or dead? No saying either way. Why not saying either way? No saying whatever. Right. Anyway, this was a very grateful monk, these teachers who had repulsed his dichotomous approach to truth. Yeah. Now, as time went by, and this Zengen is living in this temple with Sakeso, and one day this master sees him walking around in the hondo, up and down and around and up and down and around, and he's got a spade on his shoulder. So this master comes over and says, "What are you doing?" "I am searching for my late master's sacred bones." Yeah. So this teacher says very sarcastically, "The surging waves are rolling over the ocean, boundlessly extending, and the white foam is washing the skies. Where would you be looking for the late master's sacred bones? Where would you be looking in this ocean and the waves for the late master's bones? Where?" And little Zengen stands there and says, "That's the very point where my efforts are concentrated." Yeah. Well, anyway, his little Zengen's way of thinking is like ours. It's dichotomous, huh? Well, words think this way. That's the way they do. The thinker has an object in front of him, and then he thinks about it. Now, if it's only a memory, it is still in front of him. It's in the mind. It's not held out here like this object is held out here. But it's the same difference. We have good memories. It comes with the body. So you've got this thing sitting in your mind here. Oh, yes. You see it? This thing in your mind. Anything. Leaf of a tree. Look at it. There's an object in your mind. And the mind is set to work on this object in the mind. The thinking that we do as humans proceeds in this manner. Let's say it's an object out here. Oh, I wonder what this is. Oh, yes, it's two colors too, isn't it? It's gray and it's black. I wonder what this is. There isn't any escape in thinking from this kind of dualism. Here's the object that the subject is looking at. And this is on this level. They're up to the subject-object situation. Yeah. So we're with this dichotomy, birth and death, beginning and ending, creation and destruction, far and near, high and low, hot and cold, light and dark. Sure. This is thinking. It's objective thinking. And look at it well. Objective thinking. You will see that objective thinking moves away from the thinker. The thinker is after the object. It's objective thinking. It moves away from the thinker. It moves away from the awareness. No matter how far you project that object, you cannot make yourself vanish. Because if you go outside the door with it, say somebody even took it so far as to go on the other side of the door has to be open for you to see it. But no matter how far they go, you're still here. You're still with yourself. You're not going anywhere. But when he pulls within himself and becomes very subjective with the whole thing, then the object must be left behind. You leave the object behind at the door of the temple. That's what you're supposed to be doing with your meditation. Now, there is another way of thinking, and it is called a-thinking. A-thinking. You know, it's a negation like moral and amoral. Amoral. Or like the self and the not self. Let's see, the anatta and, how do you say the other way? I've forgotten. My mind doesn't work very good on Sunday mornings. You know, with amoral, we have no moral sense. There are people who have no moral sense. You know, so there's a-thinking. It's thinking not in an ordinary sense of thinking. It's thinking with something other than a word. You can think without a word, a-thinking. Yeah? Well, what are you going to call it? Non-articulation of the mind. There's a new word, did you know? It's called, instead of explaining, it's called explicating. Now, neither one of these masters gave Zengen any answer. They neither affirmed nor denied. Alive or dead, they wouldn't say. On the objective level, they could have said, well, yes, he's dead. And on another level, no, he's not. But it wouldn't have answered anything. And it certainly wouldn't have answered what was really there to be seen in the situation. And, you know, masters don't go in for all these lengthy explicatings anyway. So no saying either way. Yeah. You know, these little anecdotes and stories and koan are fingers pointing. See? You're not supposed to hang on to the finger. Language is so marvelous. Really. But it can be one of the most treacherous instruments the human mind has ever invented. And the human mind has ever invented. The human mind didn't invent it. It comes with us. You know. We cannot live without language, you know, for thought communication, because we are social people. We are dependent one upon the other. You know. But if we regard language as reality, or if we regard language as an experience, you know, we commit a most grievous fault, as the Tibetans would say. And then that's where we grasp the finger rather than that to which it is pointing. Language is a double-edged sword. One uses it carefully and wisely. One observes what one is saying, and one chooses the words as best one can. Because with words, we can not only kill the enemy, but the wielder himself may die. Language. So what we do instead is penetrate into the translucent darkness within and then try to speak from there. Yeah? Okay. And now may the peace and the power that passeth all understanding hold us and keep us in the love of the Christed consciousness while we are seemingly separate one from another. And I do thank you very much.
If you find Lola's talks valuable, more will be posted in weeks to come.